Good morning, everybody. It would be amazing to please put on your cameras as a Zoom etiquette. The worst thing is to have a situation where the presenter sees a screen of school learners literally names. So thank you guys for putting your cameras on, staying on mute, and please put any comments or questions in the chat as we go. It's wonderful to see you all here, and we really appreciate the fact that you've all moved on to Zoom so quickly. Yeah, unfortunately, we did have to move it from breakfast, so you're welcome to eat your breakfast as we go. But our health, obviously, and this pandemic is important to all of us just to keep safe. So this is an event that came out of the blue, and we're very excited because we believe in adaptive leadership and to take every opportunity that we can. That's about entrepreneurship and innovation. And this event is being hosted by 3 organizations: Elliott Osran Leadership Institute, because adaptive leadership and the lens of this kind of leadership is important to us; OrtJet, as a driver of entrepreneurship and innovation; and Staffwise, that looks at employment and sustainability in the community. So Dr. Tsuk, who's become a very good friend very quickly. Topic today is going to be adaptive innovation in times of disruption. And this topic really comes at the right time via the right messenger. Nir, as you will see, is passionate, energetic, a wonderful educator, an activator, and a connector. Excuse the pun, but pretty contagious in his passion for this subject. He has a track record in this space for the last 25 years, with a PhD from Cambridge University in social and political sciences, and has international experience in social capital, entrepreneurship, impact, and culture of innovation. And he's New York University's Global Distinguished Scholar and Visiting Professor of Entrepreneurship at Osaka University in Japan. Our audience today, Nir, really spans a very wide cross-spectrum of themselves aspiring entrepreneurs, many very successful in business, in community. There are people on this Zoom room session today that include community and the NGO space that we all work in, and people who have given much time and commitment and passion to community and organizations. Nira will help us today to access the language and tools of innovation and change, and to help us think and behave like change makers, that we can apply this to organizations and communities as well as our business. So welcome, Nir, and it's wonderful to have you. We will open up for questions a bit later on when Liat will manage that. So over to you.
Well, thank you, Viv. Thank you for the invitation. Yeah, funny times, right? Interesting times. The idea was to do it in person. Instead, I'm broadcasting from the beautiful home of Ben and Esther Levitas. The conditions are not ideal in terms of light or in terms of sound or in terms of funny fans hanging above my head. But I guess that's part of what the adaptive thing is. Thank you for the, yeah, so many, there's so many logos on the invitation, right? There wasn't enough room for other things. I think you forgot to mention the Israel, the Jewish Agency and the Israel Center. And,
you're a guest of it.
Yeah, the ANC and the everything is here. But the most important thing is that we're here. Thank you for coming. And I'm happy to report that I'll manage to leave this country. I'm supposed to fly out tomorrow afternoon with Ethiopian. It seems like the flight is leaving on time. My test returned negative, so I think I'm fine. I'm fine with that as well. But as they say in the movies, I'll be back. I'll be back after being to both, Cape Town, Kruger, Joburg, Stellenbosch. There's no reason not to come back. Again, thank you for being here. Again, would have been much nicer doing it in person. I would like to talk today about some of the things that keep me busy or keep me happy or keep me both busy and happy. And I think that the whole issue of entrepreneurship and innovation is becoming especially relevant now. And I'll share my slide. But what I'll try to do is to talk for 30 minutes, then to collect some questions. And then by 9:30, wish you all Shabbat Shalom and healthy, safe and sane weekend. That's what I'll do. So with your permission, I will share slides. Can we all see and hear and everything? Fantastic. And please forgive me. I like all these visual jokes. This is all what the current situation is all about, right? Planning ahead. We try as much as we can to struggle. The fancy title of my talk today is this: Adaptive Innovation in Times of Disruption. Sorry about that. And I think each one of the elements here is relevant, as you'll see in a minute. I want to start by saying that when I talk about innovation and entrepreneurship, I refer to it not as a topic or a field or a language or a subject, but as a mindset. It's almost like where are my glasses? A way of looking at the world, right? Something like that. And that's how we try to teach it. What we do at my NYU Institute, I think we do two things differently. First of all, we teach entrepreneurship as a language or as a culture or as a mindset. That's the first thing. And the second thing, usually when they teach entrepreneurship in universities, they do it at the business school, and they do high tech and startups and technology. We say if it's a language, it should be relevant or accessed by everybody. So we teach entrepreneurship courses or entrepreneurship certificates to rabbis and social workers and sex trafficking survivors and mayors and high school kids. And the reason I'm here is that the Jewish agency, the P2G partnership between Beit Shemesh, Matei Yehuda, and South Africa, what a funny combination, decided that what might be right for their members is a NYU certificate in entrepreneurship. They brought me here. I told people, feel free to use me and abuse me as much as you can. That's why I'm here. So going back to the mindset, what I would like to do in the next few minutes is to take you through some of the main words or the main vocabulary in my language of innovation. And then I will talk about the way the pandemic is affecting our life dramatically and how this language of innovation is even more important now than it has ever been. I'm an academic, so I'll start with some definitions. I think this is one of the most important slides in again, we'll share the presentation later. Entrepreneurship, innovation, disruption are almost too sexy, right? These are have been the flavor of the month for the past 20 years, right? 2 or 3 decades. And I think it's important to understand what innovation and entrepreneurship and disruption are and what they are not. So yeah, it's almost like a continuum, right? Innovation is about improvement, doing things slightly better. The middle is disruption, either doing new things, or my probably favorite definition of entrepreneurship is creating new solutions to old problems. And at the bottom of this continuum, you have disruption, which is not only making new things, it's making new things that make the old ones completely irrelevant. And I'll give you some examples. If I'll ask you now, what was the main disruption of Apple? What would you say? And it's an open question. Apple's disruption?
The iPhone.
Disrupting in what way?
The iPod.
Absolutely. Pardon? Disrupting in what way?
They removed keyboards and decided to combine cameras, computers, cellular devices, in one full screen device.
Yeah. Another disruption introduced by Apple,
It's the iPod.
or even more so the iTunes, right? If
Yeah.
you remember,
Yeah.
if you remember, the whole thing was change the industry dramatically. The disruption introduced by Amazon. Somebody else?
The shopping revolution. They moved everything online for shopping.
Everything completely online, right? And the revolution continues to revolutionize the world. That started with books, right? And now they say even milk, right? Or mulk, as they say in Joburg. Mulk. They sell mulk online. Crazy. Of course, he's abusing Jeff Bezos, genius, abusing his people by the on the way. But what can we do? Tesla's revolution.
Electric cars.
Not only that, but yeah,
Space.
please go ahead.
And battery storage.
And also the way you sell cars and the way you update the software, right? To a certain extent, it's more of a software company and battery company than a car company, right? And of course, Elon Musk. Are we proud of his South African background or not? Elon Musk. I've heard some stories. He had such a horrible time at what is it? Pretoria Boys High, that he ran away at the age of 18 and doesn't want to look back. But I'm sure his Afrikaans is fantastic, right? He was bullied to death. And because of that, now he's doing Tesla and SpaceX and all that stuff. What is the image on the top right?
Gutenberg's book binding.
Uh-huh. And what was the revolution this little machine has started?
Books to the public, books not only to the church and the aristocracy, books to everyone.
What happened before Gutenberg? What was the condition? There were monks sitting in monasteries, producing beer, champagne, brandy, and copying books. And the revolution the printing press has created is beyond. It's probably like all the disruptions, all the other disruptions on the screen put together. Dissemination of knowledge, religion, language, political ideas, everything. So I would like to argue that innovation in normal times is this. This is the holy grail of innovation, disruption, creating new things that would make other things obsolete. Oh. I would also like to introduce the important, again, talking about the language of innovation, failure. And you know, when they talk about entrepreneurship, I saw some statistics. Entrepreneurs who failed in the first attempt have 5 times higher chances to succeed later. The trick is not to fail only, but to learn from it, right? So some of my high-tech friends in Israel talk about, you know, they say, sometimes I win, sometimes I learn, right? The importance of failing fast and cheap. When I talk about my short-lived marriage nowadays, I talk about the importance of, if I may introduce some personal black humor here. I talk about the importance of failing fast and cheap, if possible, right? You come out to the market with a product, but as an entrepreneur or as a married person, you realize that it doesn't work. So you have 2 options. You either continue and invest more in time and energy and try to improve, or you cut your losses and move on. And I think the importance of failure and learning from failure cannot be emphasized strongly enough in the language of innovation. At best, it looks like this, right? Sometimes it looks just the left part without the right part. But this trial and error and success and learning from mistakes is crucial. Just like this. And again, apologies for all these visual jokes. I would like to argue that most of the things around us are not new. 95% of the things are old. It's just a combination of existing things. We mentioned the iPhone before. All the parts of the iPhone existed before it was created in 2007, I think. Touch screen and camera and whatever. The trick is how you combine it in a beautiful way and make a new thing. I'll give you an example. Let's talk about my country, about Israel. You know, Israel has some challenging neighbors, let's put it this way. And we enjoy building walls between us and our surrounding. In the West Bank, we build the walls up. in Gaza, we build the walls down because of tunnels and all that stuff. Now, apparently the army is using an interesting seismograph to listen to the ground and see whether someone from the other side is digging, right? So basically there's a like kind of an electronic ear which listens to see if there are all these kind of repetitive noises. Apparently the same machine could help the palm industry in Israel, right? There are dates in the Jordan Valley, and apparently one of the worst enemies of the date industry, the palm industry, the palm trees, is a little insect which digs tunnels inside the trunk. It's called in Hebrew, chidkonit hadekel. God knows how they call it in English or in Afrikaans, but what an innovative person said. The same machine that could help us detect tunnel digging in Gaza, if you attach a sensor to the tree, could tell whether the insect is digging holes, digging tunnels in the trunk. I think this is a beautiful example of the art of combination, connecting things from two completely unconnected fields. It's like, I'm trying to think, Viv, if you introduce to the field of Jewish leadership something from the building industry or actuary or whatever, and say, actually, this tool, we didn't think about it this way, but actually when you use it in our field, etc., 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 we just have to think creatively and out of the box, right? The question is what and how. We will talk about it in a minute. And again, continuing in our language of innovation, this is crucial. Crucial, especially now, but in general as well. I think we all have to be optimistic, right? I mean, if you're an entrepreneur and you're not optimistic, you're in the wrong business. If you're in education and you're not an optimist, you are in the wrong business, because the whole idea is that we believe that a better world, a better human being is possible. We believe in progress, right? So this kind of mindset is crucial. You know, every now and then I show this slide, but now I realized during COVID time, it's the other way around, right? I think negative is the new positive, right? You want to surround yourself during COVID time with negative people, not positive people, but that's another story. I want to continue and talk about another important thing, the direction of change. And again, I'm committing a crime against humanity here. I'm basically condensing a course which I teach over 3 semesters into a 30-minute presentation, but I do it for Zionism, Judaism, for Viv and Liat. Top-down or bottom-up change? Which one is more effective? And that's an open question again. Change which comes from top and trickles down, or change which starts at the bottom and goes up? What's more effective? What's more important?
Bottom up.
Why?
Because you need to hear from the people that are working on the ground what the markets are doing and what the data is showing, and then you make decisions from that.
The beautiful thing, I can't even see who's talking.
Sorry, it's me. I'm sick in bed with COVID, and
you have a face, Jared. Fantastic. So bottom up, you say. Who would like to contradict Jared publicly? Nice.
What about the need for the vision?
So you would say top down.
I never come to a conclusion, but I'm throwing out an idea.
No, you just enjoy contradicting Jared in public. Nice. It's a good Jewish trait. You know, preparing for Shabbat.
I would like to. Sorry, I would like to say that it's both and.
That's the easy way, of course, right?
No,
Mr.
no.
iPhone. You don't have a name. iPhone.
My name is Frank.
Could you elaborate on that, please?
I'm sitting at Cafe Retrieve where you should be, but you're not here. So that's why it says iPhone. Anyway, let me elaborate. I agree with Jared that we need the data from the people. We need people's sentiment. But there are 3 connectors. We need to understand the culture, what kind of culture is in the workplace. And also that I agree with the...
And then we lost him.
I'm back.
And then he's back.
So
Magic.
I agree with the other speaker about the vision, that there needs to be clarity in the vision and direction. So it's a combination between people sentiment, culture, and strategy. So from Jared's point of view, yes, people sentiment, bottom up. From leadership point of view, top down, because if it's not happening with the leaders, it's not going to happen with the staff.
Yeah, from Janet's point of view. Yeah, I couldn't agree, I couldn't agree more. And you know, the right answer to most of these questions usually is depends, right? Depends on the context. Of course, on one hand, the people on the ground know better than anybody else what the problems are. There's a good chance they would know what the solutions are at the same time. Let's give them the tools to solve it and then copy, right, or disseminate or scale up. At the same time, as Janet said, more often than not, or we would like to hope, that the leadership would have both the bird's eye view and the resources, the knowledge, the resources, the energy. They control the culture of the organization. And if they would introduce something, it would go quicker, faster, deeper, better, wider. But as Greg said, the combination is ideal. How the leadership would enable the right kind of values or the right kind of setting or the right kind of culture, and the people on the ground will feel empowered enough. Apologies, I'm spritzing one cliche after the other, but these cliches are cliches because they're right. The people will feel empowered enough. They feel the sense of ownership, and they would create the right kind of solutions that could then be spread around the organization. I'm going back to the presentation.
Michelle, you unmuted. Did you want to say something?
Sorry, but thanks for checking. Don't know how that happened.
So I'll still go back to the presentation with your permission. You know, one of the mantras of entrepreneurship is give yourself permission. So I'm giving myself permission. The last thing I want to talk about, and again, I'm giving you a brief introduction. It's like an introduction to the introduction of entrepreneurship. I'm giving you the 5 most important words, and we're going to move on. The last thing I want to talk about, you know, I've been in the entrepreneurship business for the past 25 years. And people keep on asking me about the difference between social entrepreneurship and business entrepreneurship. The way I see it, only 2 differences. Only 2 differences. The target audience and how you measure success. This is it. Don't believe what this slide tells you. I mean, believe what this slide tells you, but be critical. In business entrepreneurship, it's about market share and exit, right? In social entrepreneurship, it's about helping community, and then success is when the community was helped or there was a social problem, and success is when the problem is no longer there. And again, I think both social entrepreneurs and business entrepreneurs and government entrepreneurs, you know, now they have all these little, and culture entrepreneurs use exactly the same tools of problem solving and creative thinking and risk taking and opportunity identifying. Yeah. The really last thing I want to talk about is this. I've been in the entrepreneurship business for, as I said, 25 years. And I think I'm developing, you'll have to forgive me, Viv. I think I'm developing a slight allergy to entrepreneurs. I've seen too many of them. And there's too much of an ego thingy running sometimes. And the older I get, I realize that intrapreneurship is slightly more important than entrepreneurship. And again, just to give the blunt difference, entrepreneurs create new solutions to old problems and create new entities, new organizations. Intrapreneurs create new solutions to old problems inside an existing entity. They say, why to create a new entity if we can change the existing one, right? Why to create a new school if we could change the DNA of an existing school? Now, I'm not sure what's more difficult, you know, educating the market or changing the culture of an organization. It's like asking what's more difficult, pushing or pulling. Depends, right? But I think that there are so many organizations which exist and need this shakeup, need this entrepreneurial revolution inside them, that again, the older I get, I believe that intrapreneurship is the solution. And to a certain extent, you know, what I do here, right? What I do in South Africa, thanks to the Jewish agency, is to promote intrapreneurship inside existing Jewish organizations. So all this is lovely. But then a year and a half ago, the world has stopped, right? And it's incredible to see, we talked about planning ahead. We talked about all these things. We can't even plan a proper event, right? It was supposed to be at the cafe, now we're back, now we're here, now some people are there, crazy. And it's not us to blame, it's the Omicron. I wonder, you know, by the end of the year, they're going to run out of Greek alphabet, then they're going to come to Hebrew alphabet, and then we end up with a Chinese alphabet. So we close the circle, right? The Chinese virus will get a Chinese letter, QED. I want to talk a bit about the way I see the pandemic and how it affects dramatically entrepreneurship. We start with this, right? I mean, life is uncertain to begin with, but now it's becoming even crazier. We don't know what's going on outside. We don't know what will happen. We don't know what's happening at the moment, and how to pretend to be normal, or how to think you pretend to be normal in the right way is crucial. Another thing is this, and again, I was supposed to be with you now at the cafe, talking to you and seeing you and touching, well, not touching, I should be politically correct, just seeing and talking to you. Unfortunately, distance is back, and we will have to get used to it. You know, people are talking about this. That's how the new commute would look like, or is looking like in the past year and a half. And I see enough. I was about to say old, enough mature faces in the audience. Some of you would probably remember Lonely Planet, right? The tour guide, right? The book, the travel guide. So someone sent me a joke that the 2021 version of Lonely Planet would be not about Australia, New Zealand, and Iceland, but the balcony, the staircase, the bedroom. That would be the level of our exploration. So again, distance is back. Without getting too much into politics, I think we can see acute lack of leadership in various countries. I don't know enough about South Africa. I can talk about my country. I can talk about other places. Leadership makes a big difference. I don't have to say it just for the Austrian Institute. It's all about leadership, how you react to diseases. And it can be HIV. It could be, and you know, pun intended about this country. It could be COVID. You want leaders to lead. You want them to show you the way. You want them to be clever enough, courageous enough, brave enough, etc., etc. And unfortunately, it doesn't happen. Interestingly enough, you know, countries led by women showed a different kind of leadership. We can talk about it later. And you know, I'm a political scientist. I did 3 degrees in political science. There's a certain kind of a contract between the citizen and the state, right? I will give you part of my freedom and part of my money, and you will protect me from external enemies, from internal enemies. If you don't do that, why do I need you? Why do I need the state? Why do I need the money? It will be interesting to see the political ramifications or side effects in a decade or two to what's happening now. And even when you talk about, forget about leadership, we're talking about simple governmental performance, right? They have all these ministries, they have all these agencies, they have the emergency thingy, and it doesn't work. So if it doesn't work, should I take my destiny im ena nili mili? Should I try to find different leadership? Should I try to become a leader myself? Questions. But all these things are serious dilemmas that might have been relevant before COVID, but now even more so. In addition to distance, and the sociologists among you may appreciate this slide, we used to think that the Maslow's pyramid of need starts with food, water, and shelter. Big mistake, big mistake. Now it's about Wi-Fi, and you can't have Wi-Fi without battery. So with all the respect to food and whatever, and not even talking about self-actualization, it's all about online. When I saw my mother, right? As a good Jewish boy, I have to mention my mother at least once in any talk. When I saw my mother, who enjoys going to the market and talking, forming personal relationships with each tomato, when she went online, I realized the digital transformation is here to stay, right? And we see the digital transformation going in a crazy way. Is it a good thing or a bad thing? Doesn't matter, it's a thing. And again, without this online stuff, we couldn't have held this presentation today, right? This talk today. So we should be grateful, but realize that the online thing is here to stay. And I should mention here in this country in a polite way, as long as you have electricity, right? Or a nice generator, or solar panels or power of will or whatever, but I should stop teasing my hosts or mocking the country in which I'm having such a wonderful time. The two last things I want to mention: too much information, too much. The more I listen to the news, the less I know. The more I read, the more data. It's not only data. I get various kinds of pieces of data, different knowledge, information. I can definitely not move to wisdom with that. Everybody's becoming an expert and talking about the differences between the countries and the coefficients and the exponential and the pharmaceutical companies. Too much information, which is a problem. All this is leading to this. My brother-in-law, the partner of my brother, is a psychology professor at the University of Haifa, which apparently, did you know that Haifa is a sister city of Cape Town? Yeah, Haifa is almost as nice as Cape Town. Close. Anyway, so he's a professor of psychology, and he says people who are not anxious nowadays are not normal. If you are not anxious, you should do a serious reality check. The normal thing is to be anxious. The question is, how do you channel this anxiety into positive channels? How do you use it? And again, this moves us to the whole idea of adaptive innovation in times of disruption. How do you use this anxiety and the necessity in order to create new things? And I would like to argue, and now you'll realize why the beginning was so important about the vocabulary. I would like to argue that during times of disruption, adaptive innovation is the right kind of thing, not disruptive innovation, right? We don't need Elon Musk's and Steve Jobs and Jeff Bezos's. Disruption is around us anyway. Reality is completely disrupted. And I have some bad news. When COVID will go away, people go away, it's going to be climate, and then politics, and then economy, and then whatever. Disruption is here to stay. What we all need to be is adaptive innovators. And I'll show you some examples. We don't expect people, we don't expect you to be Jeff Bezos's or Elon Musk's. However, if you will not be adaptive innovator, you will not be able to see your parents, aging parents, or you will not be able to send your kids to school, or you will not be able to retain your job. You'll have to think creatively in order to stay as you are and continue with your life. And I would like to argue that adaptive innovation in times of disruption, what's happening now, is much more adaptive, is much more reactive, is much more bottom up, right? We don't have the time to wait for the government. We have to create quick solutions, definitely entrepreneurial, definitely who has time to create new structures. And we're talking about creating what we call in the business MVP, minimal viable product. You try something, it works, you move on with it. It doesn't work, back to the drawing board quickly, etc. So I think that if innovation was nice to have before the pandemic, now it's a critical path. We have to think innovatively, otherwise we would not be able to continue with our lives. As simple as that. And I would like to give you some examples to finish by, we have 10 more minutes, I think, or even less, to finish with, thank you for nodding, Viv, with some examples that would show you how adaptive innovation, and to assert, which is nowadays adaptive leadership. I would say in these kind of times, coming up with new solutions is one of the highest forms of leadership, because people are lost, because people are anxious, because people are looking for the right solution. First of all, so I want to give some examples of adaptive innovation. First of all, humor. It's incredible to see how humor works extra hours. I'm a big fan of these things, right? And humor helps you to adapt, as long as the humor is not too brutal, if I may. Yeah, it looks a bit more painful than you think, right? You know what? Let's talk about my family. I mentioned my mother before. This is my mother and my father. For people who don't realize, my mother is on the left and my father's on the side, on the right, just to make sure you follow me. It was my mother's birthday during lockdown or quarantine, or name number 1, number 2, number 3. We couldn't come and celebrate it with her. We sent her some packages and we came and sang under her balcony. We had 3 boys, 3 sons. Again, this is not Jeff Bezos kind of entrepreneurship, but this is adaptive innovation in times of disruption, right? You have to think creatively how to create birthdays. Similarly, you remember, how many of you remember the first lockdown when we were still optimistic and said, oh, this is so nice. We're going to have some time for baking, for thinking, for keeping up with our hobbies and journal and all this crap. Anyway, back then we were still optimistic. People were talking about the Italians who are doing their hobbies between balconies, right? Singing to each other and clicking glass wines and how beautiful and how Italian and how sweet and how lovely. Again, they didn't do it because they wanted. They did it because they had no choice. In order to continue with their social life, they had to come up with new solutions. Had to. Otherwise, they would have been stuck at home. Similarly, I don't know how it's popular, how much this program is popular in this country. Saturday Night Live, right? The American comedy show. The original business model before COVID was a group of comedians on stage in front of live audience. Then came COVID and the whole thing became completely irrelevant. What do they do now? Each one of the comedian records himself or herself at home, and then they do a collage. Apparently they're now much more popular than they were before. Much more popular. A, because people are at home, and B, because I guess this model works very well in times of COVID. Again, they didn't do it because they wanted, they had to. They had to. Otherwise, they would have gone literally out of business. So again, adaptive innovation in times of disruption. The Jews, of course, needed to do something similar. Those Jews, I'm telling you, too innovative or something. After seeing Saturday Night Live, there was a rabbi in Los Angeles who in April, in Pesach 2020, did a Zoom Seder for I think something like 3,000 people. Insane. Is that as good as the Seder you do with your family over a table? Absolutely not. Is that better than having no Seder at all? No Seder at all? Absolutely. Yes, adaptive innovation in times of disruption. I mentioned my parents. Let's talk about my brother. I have two younger brothers. The middle one is the marketing director of Audi, the luxury car in Israel. So if you come to Israel and you want to buy an Audi 20% off, come to me. I'll help you. It would still be insanely expensive. I'm not driving an Audi. I'm driving a Peugeot, even though my brother gave me this. Yeah. Anyway, at a certain point, there was a shortage of ventilators in the German market. So what Audi did brilliantly, turned one of the assembly lines, apparently of the wipers in the car. They realized that the engine of the wiper is the right engine for a ventilator. And then Audi started manufacturing ventilators. Are these the best ventilators ever? Absolutely not. Are the most sophisticated, slickest, nicest? No. Do they work? Yes. Could they create a new solution to a new problem which has emerged in the German market? Absolutely. It took them a week to convert the assembly line. They did it for a month, and then when there was no more need, they turned it back. Adaptive innovation in times of disruption. Entrepreneurial, bottom up, quick and dirty, reactive, evolutionary. That's the way it looks. It doesn't have to be industry only. Let's talk about innovation in carpentry. This crazy little hut is how COVID tests are being carried out in Israel. Super improvised with funny little sleeves, and you look at the stool. Again, I think this is a wonderful example of adaptive innovation. And again, you do it not because you want to, not because you wake up in the morning and say, oh, I want to be creative, because you have to. Otherwise, you will not be able to perform your work. Otherwise, you will not be able to do the things you're required to do. I think one of the best examples is what happens in cities. I don't know what's the situation here in Cape Town, but in Tel Aviv and in other parts of the world, many municipalities realize that less people drive their car or use public transportation during COVID. So they managed to convert some of the lanes into bicycle lanes. All it takes is to send this guy with some spray and something to change the lane. Some cities did bicycle lanes. Some cities allowed restaurants to put tables and chairs on these lanes. Adaptive innovation in times of disruption. You realize that something doesn't work, something is missing, something is changing. Let's allow more people to come up with more bikes. If you realize it doesn't work, all it takes is to send the same guy with the same spray and change it the morning after. I'm coming to an end quickly. I want to give a lovely example from civil society. There's an Israeli organization which connects young people in Israel via WhatsApp, an application. They realized that they can use their network in a much better way during the pandemic, because all these young people were living close to older people who were stranded back home. So they turned this fun social network into a network of help and assistance, in which the young people will go and assist the old people during this time of distress. Again, existing infrastructure, existing network, we just put it into a new use because of the needs. Excuse me. All this is to say, and I'm coming to an end, that I'm an optimist, right? And I look at the glass half full. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been doing. Otherwise, I would have fled South Africa a week ago, right? But I'm here, and hopefully, I'll be able to come to my country and only be quarantined for a week. That's my way of, performing Zionism, to be locked in my house for a week, just for you. Jokes aside, if we think about the last global disaster, in this scale, it was let's say World War II. So of course, incredible innovation technologically, right? Missiles and radar and airplanes, terrible loss, goes without saying, but also incredible elements of social innovation. Correct me if I'm wrong, the women in the crowd. I think the biggest or most important contributor to feminism ever was World War II, in a funny way. When men were in the front and women were asked to go and attend the factories and assembly lines, when the war was over, no one could have told them, thank you very much, toda and shalom, now go back to your kids in your kitchen. And the feminist revolution received a major boost. I want to ask you, Viv, to set an appointment for a decade. Let's meet here in 10 years' time, look back and think about what was the social impact or social change impact of COVID. Interesting. Wonderful time for collaboration, again, between people like us, but between governments and companies and academia and media. Again, I'm looking at the glass half full. The question is, and I'm coming to an end, I have literally 17 more slides. No, I'm joking. Where does it go? And again, the slide speaks for itself. 4 different scenarios: the V, the U, the L, and the W. Nobody knows. Who knows? Can you tell what the future would look like? I can't. Yeah. And I think the solution would be something like this. McKinsey enjoys playing with all these fancy, so they talk about now about navigating and nurturing the new normal. Sorry. Try to relax, resolve your problems. You'll have to do it remotely. You'll realize that working on your resilience is super important, but more difficult than you think. Resilience. I think it's becoming more difficult to remain sane than to remain safe. Try to return to your old habits as much as you can, while reimagining and reforming the way you live your life, because disruption is here to stay. The 2 last things I want to tell you, probably this is the most important slide in my deck, I think. Funnily enough, I saw it outside of a pub in Dublin. I go around and take pictures and collect all these visual images. If you befriend me on Facebook, you'll see what I posted about Cape Town this morning. Maybe we can change reality. Hopefully, people like us, change makers, can try and control what's happening. But if we can't, let's control our reaction. Let's make sure that we do the best we can to be adaptive innovators in times of disruption. And my penultimate slide is this. This for me is the epitome of adaptive innovation in times of disruption. It's an American orthodont, American dentist. And I think that's the most beautiful visual representation of turning lemons into lemonades. This is pure magic. For me, I could have, the whole presentation, that's what it is about. And the last thing I want to say, since we're talking about perspective, if people are not familiar with the duck-rabbit graph, which is the best graph ever, which shows you that you can look at reality in more than one way, there you go. It's all about perspective. It's all about looking at in different ways. And when I created the website for my NYU Institute, and we looked for a nice quotation, which is not Oscar Wilde, not Mark Twain, not the usual, right, Groucho Marx stuff, we found a wonderful sentence from Marcel Proust, if you will pardon my French. And he said that in order to go on new voyages, you don't need new landscapes. You need new sets of eyes. And this is exactly what I'm inviting you to do, to look at reality in a different way, to think about entrepreneurship as a mindset, as a language, as a culture. I know I talked a bit too long. Lisa, Liat, and Viv, please forgive me. I'll say thank you now. I'll stop screen sharing. All of you, I'll share the PDF version of the presentation with the organizers, and then we'll start selling it for $9.90. I'm joking. For $9.99, shekels or rand, the presentation could be yours. Enough. That's me. Thank you.
I can hear those applause kind of coming through the screen, because it's also an adaptive solution we've learned to deal with, is hearing the silence. But already I think that all of us, there's a lot we can take away from it. And I think from my perspective, just that idea of entrepreneurship and what's going on in each of our individual environments, because each of our environments is so different, and we have had to and need to continue to adapt. So I think everybody will take away something quite personal from this. And I can just see from some of the comments, never mind the questions that have come in, that people, it's hit individuals in the right place. And I think with all this learning and how we adapt is how we take it into our own environments. So really, thank you so much on behalf of Ioli, Orjet, the Jewish Agency, the Israel Center. It really has been special to have a morning of inspiration, despite not being able to have a cup of coffee together. And before we close off, I just want to take a look through some of the questions that maybe came up, to address some of them as we go. And I don't know, some of them may need a bit more context. So Asanda was asking about, would you consider agile to be a methodology for innovation? So I'm just going to throw that out, and if anyone wants to add to their questions, maybe just step in.
No, I'm looking at some of the questions, and again, what I try to do today is to poke you, to tease you, to tickle you. It was almost too many topics, too many jokes, too many slides, too many whatever. But basically, to give you a super again, let's go to French, menu dégustation, right? A tasting menu of what my approach to entrepreneurship would look like, right? In terms of challenges, in terms of opportunities. If I had more time, I would have done a super brief introduction to 2 or 3 tools which help people like us to do entrepreneurship, like Lean Canvas and Design Thinking and Scamper. The thing is, what you have to remember, that it's not that difficult to be an intrapreneur or to create new solutions. You have to give yourself permission. You have to make sure you understand the problem. There are some tools. It's not like a lightning would strike you, right? It's not like a eureka or God, assuming she exists. God will talk to you and say, Nir, this is innovation. No, there are tools, scaffoldings, methodologies, techniques that help people to come up with new solutions. All you need to do is to be aware of them, to add a bit of the language of innovation to your life, and to hope for good and be willing to accept mistakes, I think.
So near the question about agility, came through, and then Gary also asked what kind of rewards or incentives work to generate entrepreneurship.
Sorry, I'm not sure I understand the agility question, Viv.
Asanda,
Toda.
you want to ask it?
And there's a funny noise of static somehow. Oh, no, okay.
Asanda, do you want to unmute and ask the question?
Hi, everyone. Thank you. Thank you for raising the question that I had asked on the chat. I do think that Neil did touch on the answer because as you were going through the presentation, I think it became very apparent for me in ways in which the different tools and adaptations, I guess, for innovation and ways of even thinking about, because I think a big thing is, okay, at what particular point in time do you start to apply things like incremental innovation? And what does that even mean? And how does it even relate to when we're thinking through, especially as entrepreneurs and that are working and as social entrepreneurs through intrapreneurship and the relation with regards to that? Because I think, business right now is very much in a complex environment, and this presentation was really stellar in being able to bring forward some of the key thinkings and also seeing ways in which as entrepreneurs we can actually be navigating this continuous complexity that we find ourselves in. So
first of all, compliments are always welcome, as well as flowers. And yeah, we can see. Yeah, please continue. Jokes aside, and again, I have nothing better to say. Thank you, Asanda, for the important comments. Incentive is a huge question. Sometimes the incentive is clear. You make things better. You make people happier. You solve a problem. Sometimes the incentive has to be trickier. I'll give you an example of the things I do, right? I've created this Entrepreneurship Institute at NYU, and our three value propositions, as they call it nowadays, are super relevant topics, right? More than ever, innovation, disruption, blah, 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 sexy, all that stuff. Incredible speakers from NYU and from other parts of the world. Maybe some of you could be guest speakers in my talks in the future. This is so nice because of Zoom, right? I teach in Osaka, right? I have some colleagues in Osaka who wake up in the middle of the night, put a shirt on top of their underwear and whatever, and sit in front of Zoom and teach. Anyone can teach all the time now. And the third value proposition is an NYU certificate. And this is a major incentive for people. So some people come because of the content, other people come because of the certificate, right? Because people love certificates, especially when they come from places like NYU. Sometimes you have to create some kind of artificial incentives, and sometimes the intrinsic ones of creating a better service, improving organization, making things more efficient, or just solving a problem are enough. But you're right that inside existing institutions, these things could be much more challenging. You know, you have culture and you have existing leaders, and moving their cheese would be difficult. The trick is how you create the right kind of language and the right degrees of freedom as a leader in this organization, which would allow people to act entrepreneurially, take risks, make mistakes. In our business, the question is not what, but how, right? The main entrepreneurship question is how. How you create it, how you create the right kind of culture. How do you make sure that you're not only talking about mistakes and the importance of making mistakes, but also allowing your employees to make mistakes in a safe and healthy way. You know, my role here is the easiest. I sit here in front of my screen. I don't even have to go down to the cafe, and I throw at you some insights. It's much more difficult to take and implement it and to think about the context and about the actual setting of the problem and the organization. But I guess this one short session is better than no session at all.
So there's one question here that also just like that is worth mentioning, which is Gareth Cantor says, we need data quickly. We need data, we need it quickly to decide on whether the idea is an improvement. How do you do that?
Again, I didn't get it, sorry.
So they're just talking about the need for data to support your decision making, or to support the decision, like to see, is this going to be an improvement in my business, or is this, are we going down the right track? How do we react maybe quickly?
Excellent question. I didn't get, apparently you say data in this part of the world. We say data in America. Data. What is data? Okay. It's like milk. Give me some milk. Anyway, or not to mention robot. What the hell is robot? Data is easier to collect than you think, actually, as long as you do a little testing, prototyping and testing, right? You want to launch a new service, do a focus group or something. Try a mock something, go with it to a limited small market and collect the data, right? Data collection is much easier than you think if you do it at a smaller scale. And when people talk about design thinking, for instance, right? You start by empathizing your client. You then move to defining what the problem is. Then you ideate solutions, and immediately after that, you do prototyping and testing. You have a solution, try it. Even in the social services, you have a new idea for a service for your clientele. Try it in a small group. Do a little focus group or questionnaire or interviews, or run it by some of your safest clients. Collect quick data and implement. These things are circles, right? You collect data, you go back to the drawing board, you improve your product. But you're right. I don't know who asked this question. You said Gareth. Data, not opinions. Data. It's not about what I think the client may need, what I think the customer, data. Opinions are lovely. We want to have data. There's this hierarchy from data to information to knowledge to wisdom, right? If we collect the data clever enough, it would make sense. We will create something bigger than that, and the organization is going to be smarter. Does it make sense, Gareth?
Makes sense to me, so I hope it makes sense to Gareth as well. And I think that's all the questions. I'm not sure if there's any other questions, anyone else, but there are lots of lovely thank yous coming through, lots of people feeling, as I say, inspired by the uncomplicated approach to just thinking about the way we work and the way we can work going forward in the future. So I'm going to hand over, Viv, have you got anything else to close out and say before we say our final goodbyes?
No, I just want to open it up to the Zoom room if anyone actually wants to unmute and ask another question that you haven't put into the chat yet. Just do that quickly.
I'd love to ask a question. I know, thank you very much for the talk. Michelle here. I work for Mala Logistics with Asanda. It's a social business. You said that the only difference with the social enterprise, which I really liked, is different target audience. Social
entrepreneurship is not social enterprise.
Okay.
But please continue.
So the only difference with entrepreneurship and social entrepreneurship,
correct,
is the target audience and the way that success is measured. I love the simplicity of that, and it resonates completely. We're busy building a business. It's early stages. Do you think it's sufficient to kind of optimize for impact, which is what we're trying to do, but obviously we need to ensure we have a sustainable revenue model? So, I mean, so much is going on. I haven't even had that much time to think about it, but I think the way I'm thinking is ensure a sustainable revenue model. We need to obviously cover, costs, and then just maximize impact. I mean, any thoughts on that? It's just an open question.
Of course, it's nice to have this kind of a tiny little question at the end of the talk. As we say nowadays, we should take it offline. You have my email address. I'd love to help. The answer, my short answer to your question is yes, but how do you define impact and talk about the triple bottom line and talk about the making sure that the goals meet the structure of the organization? It's a much heavier, it's a much longer conversation. And again, social entrepreneurship is not exactly social enterprise. We can talk about it. Happy to stay in touch. Send me an email. Assuming I'll manage to, even actually, I was about to say, assuming I'll manage to get back to Israel. But even if not, if not, I'm staying here or get stuck in Addis Ababa for a week. Combination of COVID and civil war. That's fantastic. Thank you all for the wonderful comments. I should take a picture and show it to my mother. Maybe she will love me even more. Viv, thank you for the invitation. Viv, Melissa, Liat, the Jewish Agency, the City Hall of Hansby.
And Lisa from Orchard. So thank you very, very much, everyone, for coming. It's been a great, inspiring morning, picking us up from this wave that has just kind of hit us. But really fantastic to have you in our community, Nir, and you will be back. We will work on a way to take up your ideas of your courses and create our very specific program. So thank you, everyone, and have a good Shabbos and Chanukah Sameach, and stay safe. And thank you, Lisa, Liat, Jewish Agency, Israel Center, and Eoli, and Melissa. Cheers.
Cheers, everyone. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Please write to me, Michael.